of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness. Starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
Welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery. And we have managed more than $1 billion in recovery. We've helped over 1,000 community associations and business owners place insurance. We are your insurance coverage experts, and we are here live in the Dallas, Texas studio. I'm joined by our guest today. A little bit of a different format, but we're excited to also have with us the president of Dallas, Texas, the GlobalPro president, Rob Bowlby. Thank you guys, gentlemen, for joining me here today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
All right, well, I want to kick it off by talking about a little bit of an issue related to valuations. Valuations for whether it's your market pricing for construction versus the appraisal you may have obtained for insurance about a year ago, whatever else, and the valuation that you may be getting for, let's say, a refinance, right? We're seeing dramatic cost differences between what you are appraised for insurance purposes versus the valuation for, let's say, a refi or done by an appraiser for any other financial purposes, and the actual cost of construction, which also may be a fourth one, let's throw it out there, the actual adjustment values that you're getting paid in your claims. And the reality of it is that the market is changing so fast that there's huge discrepancies between all of them. And this is particularly of interest and concern for business owners, where you may be subject to what's called co-insurance. And co-insurance is a calculation of how much insurance you have, and a lot of times you have to insure to 90% of the value of the property. Now, if from one day to the next, or one quarter to the next, or half of the year to the other year, 6 months later, the value of your property or the cost of that construction are dramatically more or different, are you still properly insured? I think it's a very important question, something that you definitely should be asking your agent or broker, looking at how they did it. Now, some policies do include some protections regarding inflation, but usually they do insert an amount for that inflation, a expected amount, what's typical for inflation. And everyone will agree, certainly the three of us right here, that inflation certainly is not normal right now, and the market conditions are certainly very erratic, if you will. And the cost of construction is unpredictable, which a lot of times, unfortunately not always, is somewhat similar to the adjusted values that are being paid for these claims. But let's be honest, right? It's something very complicated, something very difficult to understand. But something for your business owners out there that are tuning into our show here. This is all about information you can use. We want to make sure that you're looking at those values and understanding the changes. And I think this is a great segue to introducing our guest here today. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so you are the Chief Revenue Officer with Classic Construction. Been there for 4 years, but we're talking a little off camera about your diverse background. Certainly not, you started in construction. So take us through a little bit about your background and also a little bit about Classic Construction, the types of clients that you're dealing with, what's the focus, and how you're helping policyholders now in recovering from loss.
Sure. So my background, I spent 20 plus years in media, advertising, ad agencies, and so forth. And I actually had the opportunity to meet the Painter family who owns Classic Construction. They were a client of mine at an ad agency, and they were wanting to do a rebrand and refresh of their website. And so during that time, I learned a lot about the construction industry and who their target audience was. And I was fascinated because unlike a lot of industries, there was just so much opportunity for growth. And it was really nice to see how their business was taking off and at that inflection point. And so this is my first foray going client side in my career, but it's been quite the education. It's been a really fun ride. So now,
I mean, we were talking about the tech and the things that we got going on and everything else, and certainly how that market has changed and how, and I actually would argue that, I mean, think of some of my earlier comments that I was just making about adjusting practices and stuff like that is really being implicated by some of the technology and how they're arguing they did. So really important stuff, and having a diverse background and understanding that stuff certainly very helpful to your clients and help you explain to it. So I want to talk, I spoke about changes in valuation as it relates to appraisals, whether it's your insurance appraisal, financial appraisals, valuations and claims. One of the hot topic that we're seeing a lot, really litigated a lot, is this issue of actual cash value or placement cost value. And there, a lot of times I see clients that when they've had a loss, it's all about who's going to do it fastest and who's going to do the cheapest. But they don't understand how the valuation under their insurance policy works and how they determine depreciation, the actual cash value, which is the net amount of the replacement cost value when you take into consideration depreciation, right? So why not go with the lowest contractor and the lowest bid? Why, well, from a construction perspective and from your perspective, why shouldn't the insured just choose the cheapest person?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and we run into that quite often, to be honest with you. So our primary audience is homeowners associations within multifamily and property management companies. And so a lot of times they're looking at this for the first time. They've never really had to navigate this landscape before. So sometimes it's just an opportunity for us to educate them that one, you don't want to save the insurance company money. It's not going to benefit you. It's not going to keep your rates from going up if you do. And two, you don't get to keep the difference. Right. And so really they're hurting themselves if they go to a bidding process and take the least amount if they're filing an insurance claim. The goal is try and get them whole again. We want to get them in, a better, situation than prior to the catastrophic loss. And so I think it's just really a matter of educating them sometimes.
Yeah, and we Rob and I were talking about some of the common expenses of rebuilding, restoring commercial properties, and some of the things that they may leave out. And so what are some of the things you see in those initial estimates? Some of the things that you guys have seen, I guess, more often lately than before, particularly in this crazy market. What are some of the things that our listeners should think about or look for in these valuations that may be being left out?
Yeah, I think one, we have to definitely take into consideration the volatility in market pricing, right? So we've seen a lot of building materials go up 100, 200, 300% over the last 24 months or so. And so we want to take that in consideration. We also, let's just say we're looking at a huge roofing project. Are we looking at the gutters, the soffit, the fences? There's a lot of things that go on just, beyond the roof. And then there's always the gotchas, whether it's Connex containers, labor, project management, temp repairs, temp utilities, porta potties, engineering, a lot of things that if you're not really well versed in building these scopes of work and filing these claims, they'll be left off and it'll be to the detriment of the client.
All right. So, Rob, we've been dealing with a lot of hail claims, right?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of the hail stuff, right? So one of the things we've been wrestling with is whether or not the hail that we or our clients have reported for the damage is actually the hail that damaged it. What are you starting to see in some of these claims, and how are these things getting resolved or worked through, and how can involving a contractor in that process be helpful?
Sure. So the two most frequent things we see is one, that hailstorm didn't occur during the policy period. So they're like, nope, that was hail from a storm 3 years ago. Your policy period only covers December of 2021 through December of 2022. We're not covering that storm. But we also see a lot that the hail that did occur with that storm, they'll acknowledge it as a storm, but that hail wasn't large enough to cause the damage. So from a roof, I know you guys do a lot of roofs. From that experience, how much damage can 1 inch hail cause?
It certainly can cause quite a bit of damage. And one of the things that we always encourage people to do is take pictures. If there's a way that you can do that as quickly as possible to document. Documentation is so key in all of this, right? And so we want to make sure that we take pictures, we get out there, we inspect the damage. We want to also make sure that we go and pull the backup documentation that we need. So we pull hail maps a lot of times that will show exactly where the impact area is, what the size of the hail was. And then we'll get up there and inspect it, and we'll go out and document everything that we need for the claims adjuster so that they can see that. But it can certainly cause some damage here, without a doubt.
And is all that visible, or are there longer term implications that, the insurance company may call it cosmetic damage, but in your all's experience, does that do something that you may not figure out 6 months, 12 months down the road?
Yeah, it certainly can. So if you have penetrations in there, it can cause damage. You can start to have water damage, mold, things like that will happen under the underlayment if they don't address those in a timely manner. So it's certainly something that you don't want to neglect, and it can also hurt you in the long run if you do file a claim down the road if you didn't address it at that time.
Really, really good information as it relates to hail. Something obviously right now, right? We're in the throes of
just
the
getting started.
Yeah, it's the throes of the hail season. So really, really important stuff. In fact, walking just across the street the other day, and we're headed to a meeting, and boom, we just got hit with hail like out of nowhere. It wasn't even in the forecast. So, for me, being the warm blood I am, living in Miami, certainly an exciting, unexpected jog to the meeting. So, so let's talk a little bit more about insurance companies. Let's talk about the hail stuff. And the process by which, and I mentioned earlier, we're seeing claims come to us where policyholders had reported the losses, and I made a comment about how, a lot of the times it's not that the insurance company is saying that it's not hail damage, they're just saying it's from a prior hail storm. So Rob, how is our team in Texas managing and dealing with that situation?
So generally, the first thing we do in that situation is go to a forensic meteorologist, and a lot of people don't know these are out there, but they can give you very specific information related to your home or property address. Not within a mile of your home, not within 3 miles of your home. It is, this storm was over your house at 4:30 p.m. on April 12, 2021, and hail was 0.75 to 1.5 inches. Yeah. And we found that the insurance company then will capitulate and say, okay, now you've shown us proof.
All right, so it's a really important step in that, and a lot of people aren't thinking that. They're just, I remember when it happened, and I saw the damage, or they hear that their neighbor reported a claim, and they're really just not connecting the dots. And it's really going to proving your damages, which is a bit of an obligation of an insured. Proving coverage, no, but proving your damages it is, and it could be arguably part of the process of by trying to actually create those reports. And now that once you've recovered from loss, let's hypothetically talk about this. Something I think doesn't get enough attention. Let me say it that way. And I say that because I was doing some research myself into the Texas construction permitting process. Take us through the permitting process here in Texas. Like, what do you need a permit for? Like, what are some of the issues that you're seeing on the renovation versus repair and those things from the construction industry?
I think it's always been a skill set to know how to navigate that landscape when you have to go down to City Hall. But even more so in the last 24 months during COVID, they've got less resources, there's fewer people, it's harder to get in front of someone. And so having that education and knowing what documentation you need, who you need to take it to, which departments, and knowing how to navigate that landscape is a real value to be able to help your customers.
Yeah, it could really cause a huge delay in your ability to rebuild. And particularly if you're a business owner, you gotta be really sensitive about that stuff. You have to plan for it. You make sure that in the valuations you're anticipating the lifetime it's going to take that for your period of restoration. For a community association, you're dealing with your fellow unit owners, your neighbors, setting expectations, right? You're avoid a lot of disputes and knowing that process and making sure you have someone that's actually going to the city and dealing with the permitting process that actually knows it and can report to you with a realistic expectation as to what it is. The costs, again, there's various different types of permits, there's different fee schedules. You need to have a familiarity with it. Now, classic, let's talk a little bit about classic for a minute,
Sure.
right? So, been around for 90 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, walk me through it. How different is today's market from, let's say, when you first joined the firm to today?
Sure.
Let's not even go back 20 years. Let's just look at the last 4 years.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so to clarify, the Painter family's been serving North Texas for 4 generations. Classic was established in the late 80s. But, since that time period, when you think back, one of the hardest challenges has been keeping up with technology. So even in the 4 or 5 years that I've been there, a lot of the contracts and things we were doing were all, tactile experiences. There was triplicate forms, things like that. So we built a nice technology stack. We have Salesforce as our CRM. We have Podium. We have PandaDoc. We have all these different technology platforms that make it easy and seamless for us to be able to communicate with both our internal and external customers. Also, from a project management standpoint, giving our clients insight into where we are from staging and mobilization all the way to the successful completion of a project. That way they're not wondering, well, when are you going to come do my house? Where are we at in this phase of construction? When is this street going to be impacted? And so we've really tried to, invest in technology to make us relevant and to keep up with the competition. It also helps us from a recruitment standpoint. So one of the biggest challenges for us right now, in addition to just keeping up with price increases and things like that, is also finding talent, human capital, right? So right now, finding quality people to come and work has been a real challenge. And as the construction industry continues to boom, we're all competing for fewer people in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I definitely think. And I mean, Rob, former banker, you've seen the economy through the ebbs and flows. Where are you seeing the touch points in the Texas market with regards to these changes in the growth and opportunity? and how might a contractor in valuing their claims may be different. And because as in your former life as a banker and in dealing with business owners going through the loan process and with community associations that were trying to get lines of credit, how do you see how has that challenged or pushed the limits of some of these owners? I mean, do you think it's a tipping point? Is it a point of frustration? Is there any advice you can possibly give to business owners or community associations that may be going through that process right now to try to pay for the construction project?
The question on a tipping point is a good one, and I don't think anybody knows. I do think when you've got construction costs going up as fast as they have been, now you've got uncertainty with the supply chain out of Ukraine, which some very interesting stuff comes out of that I was reading about last night that I didn't know came from Ukraine. Like most of our neon gas is imported from Ukraine. And then on top of that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. On top of that, you have when you're going to do a project, and if you're looking for financing, they're going to continue to require more capital into it. Yes. So I think it's going to get tougher. I hope it doesn't go back to what it was in 2008 or 2009. But I do think we have some risk that the economy downturns some, and when you do that, you see weaker companies shake out. Yep. Now and particularly in the contracting industry, because they usually aren't the strongest finance companies, and that's why you want to go with a company like Classic that's been around. You said started the '80s. That's been through 4 recessions now at this point.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's all very helpful information, and I think as you are a community association or business owner trying to consider your vendor, and to Rob's opinion, using a well-established firm that has been through that, they're definitely built-in resiliency, right? So I definitely think it's an important point. And making sure that you understand and they have references, they have the proper licensing, they have the experience. Growing up in the construction business, being a licensed general contractor, having done construction, I still participate a lot in development projects and making investments in them. We own and operate our own buildings, and we have a diverse amount of knowledge and experience. And I think we're just built differently, right? Like when we've been there, seen it, done that. You don't just roll the income from one job into the next to pay for the next one, and then all of a sudden when it starts to slow down a bit, you have no more cash flow because you just rolled all the income from one job into the next job. Right. And you went from having like a 20-foot fishing boat to a 60-foot fishing boat, and I'm sure we've all seen the meme out there with the original contract and the change order. The change order is way bigger than the original contract. So, I mean, it's just, it's funny, but it's like the reality of it. I mean, we've seen this all in the construction industry. So if you're out there, business owners, community associations, make sure you're checking the references, understand the companies, go through a real interview, right? Ask them about what they're doing. And that accounts for also when you're going through the restoration process and cleaning up from loss or disaster. A lot of times I see community associations or business owners just rush into the project and don't treat it as like a typical construction project, right? They're not going through the typical bid process. They're signing an AOB, assignment of benefits, with whomever comes through the door because they're in this emergency situation. But shortly after you mitigate, it's no longer an emergency. It's just a construction project. Go to bid, work with the contractor, a trusted contractor. It can be the same person that does the mitigation, certainly, like Classic into the mitigation, reconstruction. But go through the process of understanding what that scope of work is going to be. Slow down, because your insurance company wants you to rush through it, hoping that you're going to somehow value engineer and fit all of this work into a much smaller number. But we know all it's going to do is cut out some of the work that probably also needed to be included. You go with a cheaper carpet. Maybe you don't even replace the carpet. You just clean the carpet, even though you should have been replacing the carpet. Baseboards, you're using water damaged baseboards, putting them back. There's so many things that go into it. So it's been awesome to have you here. Thank you, Jason, for joining us. How can our audience find out about Classic Construction and all the great things you guys have been doing?
Yeah, so we have a website, classicconstruction.com. We're also very visible on social, so you can look us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And I invite you to peruse our website, check out some of our blog articles, and our phone number's there, and our contact information as well. So please feel free to reach out. We look forward to speaking with you.
All right, Jason, Rob, thank you guys so much for joining me here today in the Dallas office. This has been a great broadcast. A lot of great information. We love that you put out a blog and all that other stuff because unfortunately, I think more people need to be doing it. You need to be putting your information out there. Be a source for information. That's what this is all about. I want to thank all of our audience for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live. This has been great. We're talking about issues that are not just relevant to Texas or even Florida, but this is an issue that's throughout the country. The market is changing. You need to know this information, and the best way to keep up with that information is to hit the subscribe button, like us, and follow us on all the social media platforms, and join us next week right here, same time, same place on Recovery Report Live.